Because understanding great literature is better than trying to read and understand yet another business book. On the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, we commit to reading, dissecting, and analyzing the great books of the Western canon. You know, those books, from Jane Austen to Shakespeare, and everything else in between, that you might have fallen asleep trying to read in high school. We do this for our listeners, the owner, the entrepreneur, the manager, or the civic leader who doesn't have the time to read, dissect, analyze, and leverage insights from literature to execute leadership best practices in the confusing and chaotic postmodern world we all now inhabit. Welcome to the rescuing of Western civilization at the intersection of literature and leadership. Welcome to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. Hello, my name is Jesan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, episode number 87 in regular numbering, with our guest co-host today. The last time he will be guest co-hosting, at least for this season. He'll be back next season. Don't worry, folks. We're not booting him off the show completely. Actually, we're letting him come in more, actually, weirdly enough. Tom Libby. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Jesan?
Well, you know, we're rounding the corner towards the end of the year. It's the holidays. So just like in most cases, when you eat too much and the belt gets loosened, we're loosening the belt of discipline around here, and things are falling apart left and right. So it's great. It's good times.
Love it. That's awesome. I love lack of discipline. Not.
Our core demographic is going to love that. All right. Yeah. So we are going to cover a short story today. It's not really a book. It's a short story today that was originally published near the beginning of Willa Cather's writing career in 1896. And she published this short story under the pseudonym Elizabeth L. Seymour. And you can actually find this this book if you go and Google the Cather writings at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. You can actually find this book here, or the short story here that we're going to cover today. And it was published in Harper's Weekly and a few other places, and then it was republished a few times. It didn't get a whole lot of popularity during the course of her lifetime, but it does fit the Christmas theme or the winter holiday theme, although for us here, we say Christmas. So the Christmas theme that we're doing at the end of the year here. And it kind of really acts as a jumping off point for our exploration of the actual meaning of the Christmas holiday. And of course, how it's juxtaposed at the end of the year next to New Year's. So we're going to focus our conversation today around themes of forgiveness, desire, and the inevitable tension between the unrealized dreams of prodigal children and the siren call of home. And so today we will be talking about Willa Cather's short story, A Burglar's Christmas. Now, the version that I have, and by the way, there's many open source versions floating around, the version that I have was published to support the work of 3Ps, a charity registered in England and Wales. That's one of the versions that I have today, but there's many different open source versions floating around. I recommend you get yourself a copy of this. And it's a real easy read. It's only 30 pages when published. And the link that I sent to Tom from the University of Nebraska Lincoln, I think it was only it was like a 10-minute read. It was easy, right?
Yeah, about that. 10 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not that hard. So from A Burglar's Christmas by Willa Cather, we're going to pick up literally right at the beginning. Two very shabby-looking young men stood at the corner of Prairie Avenue and 80th Street, looking despondently at the carriages that whirled by. It was Christmas Eve, and the streets were full of vehicles, florists, wagons, grocers, carts, and carriages. The streets were in that half-liquid, half-congealed condition peculiar to the streets of Chicago at that season of the year. The swift wheels that spun by sometimes through the slush of mud and snow over the two young men who were talking on the corner. Well, remarked the elder of the two, I guess we are at our rope's end, sure enough. How do you feel? Pretty shaky. The wind's sharp tonight. If I had anything to eat, I mightn't have minded so much. There's simply no show. I'm sick of the whole business. Looks like there's nothing for it but the lake. Oh, nonsense. I thought you had more grit. Got anything left you could hawk? Nothing but my beard. I am afraid they wouldn't find it worth a pawn ticket, said the young man ruefully, rubbing a week's growth of stubble on his face. Got any folks anywhere? Now's your time to strike them if you have them. Never mind if I have. They're out of the question. Well, you'll be out of it before many hours if you don't make a move of some sort. A man's got to eat. See here, I'm going down to Longtane's saloon. I used to play the banjo in there with a couple of coons, and I'll bone him for some of his free lunch stuff. You better come along. Perhaps they'll fill an order for two. How far down is it? Well, it's clear downtown, of course, way down on Michigan Avenue. Thanks. I guess I'll loaf around here. I don't feel equal to the walk, and the cars are crowded. His features drew themselves into what might have been a smile under happier circumstances. No, you never did like streetcars. You're too aristocratic. See here, Crawford, I don't like leaving you here. You ain't good company for yourself tonight. Crawford? Oh, yes, that's the name. There have been so many, I forgot them. Have you got a real name anyway? Oh, yes, but it's one of the ones I've forgotten. Don't you worry about me. You go along, get your free lunch. I think I had a row in Longton's place once. I better not show myself there again. As he spoke, the young man nodded and turned slowly up the avenue. He was miserable enough to want to be quite alone. Even the crowd that jostled by him annoyed him. He wanted to think about himself. He had avoided this final reckoning with himself for a year now. He had laughed it off and drunk it off. But now, when all those artificial devices which are employed to turn our thoughts into other channels and shield us from ourselves had failed him, it must come. Hunger is a powerful incentive to introspection. (1896) in Chicago, hanging out with the slush. Turns out that 1896 in Chicago is just as bad as 2023 in Chicago. So, introspection always comes at the end of the year. And what we do on this podcast is we talk about books and short stories. We try to glean some ideas and thoughts, something that leaders can use from these works. And in thinking about the three holidays that occur at the end of the year, Pache, Tom Libby, and I'm going to say this, Thanksgiving does occur at the end of the year in the rotation. Then we have Christmas, then we have New Year's. I know it is football day for Tom, not Thanksgiving Day. I want to be sensitive to that. But it does come there, right? And there are principles, right, that are wrapped around that rotation, right? And it's interesting because I've started reading a book called The Fourth Turning in preparation for some topics that we're going to cover next year by William Howe and Neil Strauss, written back in 1997. And they talk about in that book, or they write about in that book, how we as modern people, and it is a critique of modernity, we have abandoned the idea of cyclical time. We're very much linearly focused in our perception of time because, well, we're linearly focused in our perception of progress. And cycles kind of perturb us a little bit. Cather, however, came from a different time, right? And yes, she had grown up in Nebraska and she'd grown up in the Midwest. And so she came from a place where cycles really did matter. Cycles of time, cycles of growth. When you lived on the Great Plains in the late 1890s and the early 20th century, and you were a farmer on the Great Plains or a rancher on the Great Plains, you were going to be involved in cycles. And you were going to feel the rhythm of that, and you were going to transpose that to human relationships. And that's something that we see with these three holidays placed at the end of the year, but it's also something that we see in the Burglar's Christmas with themes of gratitude, forgiveness, reconciliation, and ultimately renewal. In our more linear age, the postmodern age we now live in, whether business or personal, we tend to be driven by the idea that we could have done more or accomplished more or been more. We could have progressed linearly more during the year. This, of course, creates tensions because Now you're caught up in an endless, shall I say, cycle of never having done enough. And this is where we get the penultimate expression of our insanity with not being able to reconcile linearity with cyclical nature of time, with the New Year's resolution. You know, that thing where all of you show up in the gym where I'm at, and I've been there the last 365 days at 4:30 in the morning, every morning for the last 365 days. And then all of you are on the machines. And on the weight rack. And squatting. And deadlifting. But then guess what? I take heart. Because you're all gone by February. Maybe March at the latest. But the vast majority of you are gone. And the reason why is because of this cyclical nature of time, the cyclical nature of introspection. And don't worry, you'll be back in the same cycle next year, hitting yourself on the head, wondering, or someplace else, wondering how can you break out of this? We are driven by an overwhelming ambition to self-improve in America. Whether that's right or wrong, we just are. And you get a touch of the beginning of this in the Burglar's Christmas. Cather was a writer who kind of sat on that, and William Faulkner was another one who kind of sat on that boundary between the old world, the pre-modern world, and the modern world that was coming up. A modern world defined by writers like Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Dos Passos, who we have covered on this podcast as well. But then there was the old world that had come before, defined by writers like Hawthorne and Melville and Poe, where the cyclical nature of experience was running dead set into the linear nature of progress. And introspection was something that was going to happen there at that transition. So I'd like to talk a little bit about introspection today with Tom, along with some other things, including Jingle All the Way. We're going to talk about getting beat down at Christmas. And my personal favorite topic this time of the year, which I wish this was an actual holiday that would make it into the rotation, from Seinfeld's episode in 1997, The Strike, Festivus, for the rest of us. Tom, with that rousing introduction and my flashing lights behind me, which none of you can see on the audio version of this. On the video version, you'll be able to see the flashing lights that I've wrapped ignominiously around my tree. What do you think of introspection at the end of the year, and how do we measure success or failure? What do you think of how all that happens in the holiday season? You know, the holiday time, because it is this weird cyclical thing that happens at the end of all this linearity.
Well, it's funny that you say that, like from a personal standpoint, because it's not just persons that do this, like companies do this too, right? Like,
oh yeah,
companies they'll set something in motion. They'll have these end of year meetings where they gauge like their success of the year or whatever, and then they'll design goals for the following year, and then they'll set them in motion, and then they'll meet about it next December, and they'll talk about whether it was success. It's not just an interpersonal thing. I think to your point, we've gotten this way about the way we think about these things. And before I go too deep into it, I'll give you I guess my feeling on this. I'm not sure if it's a philosophy or a feeling, but my son was talking about getting back into shape and working out and stuff like that, right? This was like a Tuesday or something like that in the middle of the week. Him and I were just talking, and he goes, Dad, you know what? I think I'll start working out. So, Sunday I'm gonna start. And I go, wait, time out. Why are you waiting till Sunday? He's like, well, it starts a fresh week. I want to get a fresh. I go, what difference? Why can't you start tomorrow? Hell, why can't you start today? If it's something that you want to do and something you want to change and something you want to influence and make better in your life, why are you waiting until Sunday? And if that's the case, then why not wait until the first day of the month? Like what
right.
different, like what, let's just turn the page on the calendar and start afresh, start anew, start like, I don't understand the philosophy of waiting until Sunday to do something you think is going to make yourself better. Why are you waiting, right? So go back to this, and I'm going, why are we waiting until the end of the year to do this? From any of these perspectives, even from the corporate perspective, why are we not looking at this on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, weekly basis, daily basis? We should be looking at ways to improve ourselves minute by minute, never mind at the end of the year. Like, this to me it's baffling. The whole thought process behind this to me is baffling. And why are we only thankful at the end of the year? I tell my significant other every single day that I'm thankful for her to be in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. Not a single day goes by. And I ask her, I have asked her in the past, does it bother you? Should I not do that? Like, I know, because people say that, showing gratitude and that stuff is great, but, getting like hounding over day, like sometimes it can just, it starts to sound disingenuous. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her that, and she went, absolutely not. We've been doing this long enough that if you stopped, I would think something was wrong. I said, okay. So for her, it's not an annual, or it's a daily affirmation for me to thank her and be thankful that she's in my life, right? Like, so I guess there's levels here, and you can peel back onions left and right. And, from a personal perspective, it should be a lot more frequent. Maybe the corporate thing daily is probably not feasible, right? Like, I get that. But it should still be, there should still be more in tune to it than, it's like driving down the road, right? And realizing that you're only a mile from home, and you should have stopped at the supermarket, and you're like, oh crap, like, now is not the time to think of that, right? Like,
right.
So I'm thinking like the end of the year is not the time. It's not the only time to be thinking of that. You should be thinking of this frequently throughout the course of the year. But why we do it, why we wait until the end of the year, that is a phenomenon that I've never understood. No one's ever given me a good enough reason for me to think that this is like, oh, it's just the way to do it. This makes sense. Everybody should be thinking of it this way. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think it's because I think it has something to do with that, the way in which we perceive progress and cycles. I do. I genuinely think that there's something there in Strauss and Howe's idea in The Fourth Turning. I think there's something there.
Yeah.
Where, and I think it's become worse as we've gone further and further away from the land, such as it were, right? As human beings, particularly us in America, as we've conquered more of nature, and we've been able to free ourselves, at least we think we have, free ourselves from the constraints of nature and the constraints of time itself, where we get, you see this in people, they get so frustrated. People do. Okay, so here's the thing. And I've revealed this on the podcast before. I'll say it again. I do not do time management training. I don't see the point of it. I don't believe that it's something that is valuable. If you want to get a time management training from me, and you want to professionally, hire me to do that, I will refuse. I will turn you down very politely, and then I will send you directly to our YouTube channel, where there is an 1.5 hour long time management presentation, which has 4 views, because no one wants to sit there and watch that for that long. And I cover everything that needs to be said about time management. And I have not done a time management training since I shot that in 2017. That's in the last word for me on time management, because the idea that we can manage time in a corporate setting is the ultimate extension of, we are masters over nature. We're masters over time. To me, it's hubris. When in reality, what we should be managing, to the point you made about your son, by the way, he'll probably be in the gym next to me on the deadlift machine in January, improving himself.
No. So I have a literally complete gym in my basement. And when I say complete, I mean, like, literally, if you would think if I painted the walls, you were in like a Planet Fitness.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So he'll be in your gym.
Yeah. I actually go one step further, because I actually have heavy bags in there and like all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Like, Planet Fitness doesn't have.
I need to go to Tom's gym. What am I doing? Why am I going to the Y?
Why are you paying for this? Sorry.
But like, it's the ultimate extension of that idea of self-improvement, is that we're just going to manage our time. And so you're right, like to your point about him, like he should be managing his priorities. He's clearly not putting his health as number one, whatever, right, or whatever it is that he's doing with, working out for. And if he did, he would go do that. Whatever you put in that number one slot is what's important to you. And I think I know when I say that, have said that in the past to audiences, everybody shrinks because it's too close to the truth of the solution, such as it were, the solution to the problem.
That's like my one of my favorite. My father-in-law, who's since passed, was very influential to me. I love this man more. I mean, loved him probably more than my own biological family. Right?
Wow. Okay.
He was a mentor to me, a spiritual advisor, like the whole 9 yards. Right?
Yeah.
But I used to drive him batty when I used to say, I'm like, I don't understand this philosophy. You know that you hear that term, why put off till tomorrow what you can get done today?
Right.
And I've never bought into that. My philosophy is the exact opposite. Why do today what you can put off till tomorrow? And it used to drive him batty. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. That means that what I'm doing today is the most important thing to me. If it's not important, it can wait until tomorrow.
Okay, but having the courage to admit that is something that people don't have.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, because it used to drive him nuts.
Right. See, I'd be like, well, at least you have the courage to admit it, and I just move on with the rest of my life. And this is the thing with introspection. Like, so introspection is the act of looking backwards. It's time's arrow that looks backwards. And we talk a little bit about this before we maybe turn the corner to something else. But regret, right? Like, we don't talk about regret in our culture well either. I think of the movie, because you and I are both cinematic people. You probably saw this movie. Remember Magnolia? And all the scenes with Jason Robards and, well, not all of them, but the whole subplot with Jason Robards and Tom Cruise, who was remember Neil Strauss in The Game? Remember that whole thing in the 1990s? The pickup artist guy. Yeah, he was that pickup artist guy. And it turned out, of course, like it usually does with folks like that, that's why this movie worked, that he had been damaged by a lack of a relationship with his father. And he just wanted his father to die so that he could be released from that anchor that was tying him down. And one of the lines in the film, and I'm not going to repeat all of it because there's some stuff in there that I'm not going to, some words in there that I'm not going to say, some naughty words I'm not going to say. But basically, Robards, as he's dying from cancer, tells him that, the thing that kills us is not the things that we did, it's the regret.
Yeah.
And I think that drives a lot of introspection. Introspection is not a forward shooting arrow. It's not, hey, we're going to do this tomorrow. It's more like, I didn't do that yesterday, and now I'm going to flagellate myself. And I also think there's a religious element to that. We don't use Christian terminology because we're post-Christian now. We're better than that. Okay, so let's not use Christian terminology. Let's throw all that out. But we keep the guilt. We keep all.
Yeah.
We're going to throw out all the religious terminology and the religious structure around it, and the theology around it that helped us navigate the guilt, or at least put it in its right spot. We're going to toss all of that, but we're going to keep the guilt.
Yeah, right.
So don't eat that chocolate cake at Christmas.
Oh no, I'm letting go of that guilt. It's the interpersonal guilt that I'm going to hold on to. I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat. I'm just letting it out. Listen, when you grow up dirt poor, and
absolutely,
like I tell my kids all the time, I used to take 2 pieces of bread and put the most random stuff in the middle of it. Honestly, I would mayonnaise. I would just have 2 pieces of bread with mayonnaise in the middle. And I would call it wish sandwiches because I wish there was meat in it. Right? Like,
that's pretty good. That's actually pretty good.
So now when I stack the cold cuts up 6 inches high, and my kids are like, Dad, that's gluttonous. I'm like, no, it isn't, because you don't know what it's like to have a wish sandwich. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm not retrospecting what I eat. I'm eating whatever now.
Oh yeah. Well, my children monitor what goes into my mouth too. I've never had so many people in my life ever monitor what goes out of in my mouth, like ever. It's been stunning. I tell them, like, I'm surprised I was able to survive before you people. Like, how did I get here?
How did I get here? Anyway. But it is true. Like, but I think when it comes to the regret, it's the interpersonal relationships that we view like that, right? With,
yeah.
With him and his father, with in this particular story, that same conversation is going to be later on in this story, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, why does it always come back to our fathers? I don't know.
Well. That's part of the religious superstructure that we just dumped. We just dumped out the back. We don't even pay attention to that anymore, right? So I'm not even gonna visit that for the time being. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the patriarchy, there's absolutely no episodes that cover that this season. We'll cover that next season.
You're SOL.
Yeah. Well, no, we touched a little bit on it in our episode where I talked about Virginia Woolf a little bit, because Virginia Woolf, very strong feminist writer, wrote in that sort of mode. And of course, the episode Slouching Towards Bethlehem, where we talked about Joan Didion's great writing, where she wrote an entire essay about John Wayne when she was like 10, and talked about how she could sense his masculinity coming off the screen so strongly, or his masculinity came off the screen so strongly that she could sense it even as a 10-year-old, but she didn't know where to put that, right? That's really the only two times that we've kind of covered the patriarchal order of reality. Maybe because I'm not looking to be in trouble, at least not at that level quite just yet. But anyway, we'll save that for season 3.
We'll wait till we get to episode 187.
Yeah, there you go. Then I'm uncancelable at that point. Right. Actually, I'm never really worried about that. So anyway, okay, one other thought. So forgiveness, right? So, okay. So you got introspection, you've got regret, right? But that, again, part of that structure that we've thrown out, which is explored in this story, particularly from the mother's perspective, is this idea of forgiveness and reconciliation. And this is all very interesting to me, because in grad school, I studied conflict resolution and reconciliation. Almost nobody ever asks me to do reconciliation work. Matter of fact, never. I'm never asked to do reconciliation work. And I've done all the study and written all the papers and done all the research, and nobody cares. And that's not a hyperbolic statement. Like, there's no interest in it whatsoever.
Well, I think partly there's some weird, I don't know, maybe we don't get into it on this particular episode or whatnot. I think we could probably do a whole episode on just that, because there's like, forgiveness is a construct, right? Like, it's right. Like we're using a word to symbolize a feeling, but we don't usually allow our actions to fortify those feelings or to showcase those feelings, right? Like, right. You get into something with somebody, like a good friend or a family member or whatever, and somebody says, they say, I forgive you. Right. And then you just go about your, like, so the person being forgiven just kind of goes about their business normally, where the person that's doing the forgiving doesn't always actually release that emotional control of that feeling, right? Like, it's right. So you're saying the words I forgive you, and then but your actions don't always support your words. So, but to the person who's being forgiven, they act like it is. They just don't even care anymore. They're like, great, I was forgiven, I'm moving on. And it creates a very weird dynamic, which is, I think, to what you're talking about, especially from a corporate perspective, or like this outside reconciliation nobody really is asking you for or wanting it, because nobody really knows how to really do it. And they're thinking it's not a real thing. Like, right. Well, and that's okay. That's fine. Forgiveness is not a real thing. It's a construct.
It's a construct, right? And see, this is part of the, again, when you try to culturally, I'll relate it back to this idea of culturally unmooring ourselves from nature. When you unmoor yourself from nature, now you sort of, or unbind yourself, not unmoor, unbind yourself from nature. as a society, particularly our postmodern society. In Japan is probably worse than we are on this, because, like, give me a break. Like, you can live in an entire apartment in Japan and never see another human being for literally decades. Like, that's insane, right? This is why one of my favorite blogs at the end of like his newsletters, or the end of their newsletters, they say go out and touch grass, right? Go out and get close to nature. And I think it's why I keep this plant that's behind me, in my office. Like, there's things that are outside of the purview of pure mechanistic evolutionary response. There's things that are outside of that, and forgiveness and reconciliation is one of those things. And by the way, in a corporate structure, people are running around asking for forgiveness all the time. Let's be clear about this. If I put together a marketing campaign for a beer and it doesn't work, the most tone deaf thing I can do is be like, well, I guess that didn't work. Everybody yells at you on Twitter. I'm sorry, X. Then, right?
Yeah.
But if you
in the corporate environments, that you get that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Right.
So people are they completely look at it from a different angle. It's not, the interpersonal relationship forgiveness is totally different than corporate forgiveness. It's totally different.
Well, and corporate forgiveness comes down to PR. It's a PR strategy. I mean, let's be clear here. It's a PR strategy, right? Like, it's good PR. It's bad PR for me to show up and and to say, well, it's a shame that didn't work out. Still going to buy our product? With the "What Me Worry" grin from Alfred E. Newman back on the cover of Mad Magazine back in the day, right? It's a better corporate strategy from a PR perspective to come out and pretend to be, or maybe not pretend, put on the show, the forgiveness show. And that's where you get the really well-worded, actually not even worded, you get the word salad memos that don't make any sense. But everybody gets so lost in the word salad that people just wander away, which is what the PR people are relying on. People wander away and their attention goes to something else because the word salad is too much. And you're right, forgiveness, the change in behavior hasn't actually occurred. And so the behavior continues on. Meanwhile, they word saladed something, and so they have culpable deniability from the lawyers. So the lawyers and the PR people get together to gin up the culpable deniability.
Exactly. You don't have culpable deniability in an interpersonal Although I do every once in a while find myself saying to one of my significant others in my life, whether it be the wife, the kids, whatever, going, listen, I have plausible deniability here.
Plausible deniability and culpable deniability are two different things.
Two different things.
I know.
Two
different things. Let's be clear on our language here. All right. Well, no, that's good. I think we've solved absolutely nothing, but that's okay. That's good, because we have more of this story that we can look at. So back to Burglar's Christmas by Willa Cather. So we're going to pick up a few pages later where a decision is about to be made. So let's start with that. Whichever way his mind now turned, there was one thought that it could not escape, and that was the idea of food. Talking about a wish sandwich. Yes. He caught the scent of a cigar suddenly, and felt a sharp pain in the pit of his abdomen and a sudden moisture in his mouth. His cold hands clenched angrily, and for a moment he felt that bitter hatred of wealth, of ease, of everything that is well-fed and well-housed, that is common to starving men. At any rate, he had a right to eat. He had demanded great things from the world once, fame, wealth, and admiration. Now it was simply bread, and he would have it. He looked about him quickly and felt the blood begin to stir in his veins, and all his straits. He had never stolen anything. His tastes were above it. But tonight there would be no tomorrow. He was amused at the way in which the idea excited him. Was it possible there was yet one more experience that would distract him, one thing that had power to excite his jaded interest? Good. He had failed at everything else. Now he would see what his chances would be as a common thief. It would be amusing to watch the beautiful consistency of his destiny work out itself even in that role. It would be interesting to add another study to his gallery of futile attempts and then label them all. The failure as a journalist, the failure as a lecturer, the failure as a businessman, the failure as a thief, and so on, like the titles under the pictures of the dance of death. It was time the child Roland came to the Dark Tower. A girl hastened by him with her arms full of packages. She walked quickly and nervously, keeping well within the shadow, as if she were not accustomed to carrying bundles and did not care to meet any of her friends. As she crossed the muddy street, she made an effort to lift her skirt a little, and as she did so, one of the packages slipped unnoticed from beneath her arm. He caught it up and overtook her. "Excuse me, but I think you dropped something." She started. "Oh, yes, thank you. I would rather have lost anything than that." The young man turned angrily upon himself. The package must have contained something of value. Why had he not kept it? Was this the sort of thief he would make? He ground his teeth together. There's nothing more maddening than to have morally consented to crime and then lack the nerve force to carry it out. It's a truly great observation, by the way. Pause. That is a truly great observation from Willa Cather. That is truly, I underlined that twice, actually. A carriage, back to the book, a carriage drove up the house before which he stood. Several richly dressed women alighted and went in. It was a new house, and it must have been built since he was in Chicago last. The front door was open, and he could see down the hallway and up the staircase. The servant had left the door and gone with the guests. The first floor was brilliantly lit, but the windows upstairs were dark. It looked very easy just to slip upstairs to the darkened chambers where the jewels and trinkets of the fashionable occupants were kept. Still burning with impatience against himself, he entered quickly. I'm going to stop there at that spot because there's a reveal there. There's a turn there, which is interesting. It's sort of the reveal of the MacGuffin or Anton Chekhov's gun. A little bit there gets to fire in Willa Cather's A Burglar's Christmas. But something that's even more interesting there, and like I said, I like that idea that she had about morally consenting to a crime and then not having the nerve to go through with it. By the way, how many people actually do that? I think quite a bit. That's why that hit a nerve with me. But I was thinking about this book in the context of Black Friday, or at least what Black Friday used to be. Now, Tom and I are both of the age where we remember people getting beat down at Walmart over a plasma television. Remember that?
Tickle me Elmo.
remember when people were like throwing hands over a doll from Sesame Street?
Sesame Street toy. Like, I couldn't even believe it.
And you were like, what? But every Black Friday, I think for at least 20, 30 years, things seem to escalate. They seem to escalate and escalate and escalate and escalate. And again, and people, lining up outside of Walmart or Target or name your name brand here, whatever the hot toy was, whether it was Pokemon, Tickle Me Elmo. Remember Tamagotchis? Remember that?
Yeah.
Ugh, terrible things. I had those around my house, which, by the way, you could get in copious amounts in July. All of a sudden, Christmas Eve, no Tamagotchis to be had anywhere. Not within the lower 48 states. Maybe you could find one in China. She would have to get there. And you couldn't get there. If you're making $52,000 a year and you're Sinbad in that movie Jingle All the Way, remember that movie?
I do.
My wife hates that movie, but I watched it with the kids the other day. And I laughed. I laughed because I was like, our children have to see the cultural artifact that was Black Friday. Because they will never know that. Our children no one in their 20s who is listening to this podcast right now will ever know what it was like to have someone want to throw hands with them over a 52-inch plasma screen television.
Forget about the television. Throw hands with them for saving a spot in line for your wife. Like, your wife would say, I have to go to the bathroom. She'd go to the bathroom and come back, and they'd be like, hey, don't cut in line. Don't cut in line. Like, she's with me, you idiot.
She's
like
with me.
like, she's not cutting. We're the same person. Like, oh God, it's not even like, but yes, that they're not. So not only are they going to not know it from that perspective, but Black Friday is not the same thing anymore anyway, in the sense that now it's Black Week. Like, it's like the sales start on Monday of Thanksgiving. Like it's crazy that, like, And now you got Cyber Monday and Small Business Saturday, and like there's
And
so
Giving
many,
Tuesday.
yeah, exactly. And this like there's so many versions of this particular day now that these guys are never going to understand what it's like to have a real, true
Oh no.
Black Friday where you get up at 2 a.m. because you have to be in line by 4 a.m. because the store opens at 6, and if you're not in the store, like they're never going to understand that ever.
They will never understand how normally sane and otherwise law-abiding adults who paid their taxes
Have health insurance.
have health insurance, moved snow from their front porches, mowed their lawns, amenable, hi Bob, how you doing? Getting in your car. My baby takes the morning train, works from 9 to 5. All of that gets suspended one day of the year. All of a sudden, we're in like an apocalyptic animal, like Mad Max, like Thunderdome, like behavior.
I wonder if somebody went through that experience and that's how they came up with the movie The Purge.
Well, that's the only reason The Purge works.
Right.
Because
like
people remember that. One day. But you know what? The Purge won't work 10 years from now. No one's going to care about that movie 10 years from now because people will be like, really? People do what? It'll look old. It'll be weird. It'll be a weird thing. No, so I did say I was going to revisit Festivus. So again, Festivus for the rest of us. So you know how Festivus came about? I remember this because I was a gigantic fan of the Seinfeld show. I watched episodes of the show like people watch episodes of Cheers multiple times. I've watched episodes of Seinfeld multiple times. My wife really likes Friends. That show was okay, I guess. I was a Seinfeld guy. So there you go. I'm aware of Friends. I watched the other show. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I watched every episode of both of those shows, but could not for the life of you I don't rewatch shows a lot. Like I'm not that person that will watch the same episode of a show 3, 4, 5 times. I just don't do that. But I have watched every episode of both of those shows. So there's that.
I will watch that. I will watch the episodes of Seinfeld. And weirdly enough, over the last couple of years, I found myself falling into a pit with Frasier, the original Frasier show.
That was a good show too, yeah.
Because Kelsey Grammer was,
watched all those too.
Well, and I appreciate the dad more. I appreciate John Mahoney way more than I did when I was a younger man. Because I'm like, oh my God, I wish my dad were around. Oh my God, that would be spectacular. Drive him crazy all the time. But so in Seinfeld, in the episode called The Strike, where a number of different things happen, Kramer gets invited back to his old bagel job because now they're making $12 an hour, and hilarity ensues from that. But George Costanza, his father Frank, comes up with a holiday called Festivus, and he comes up with it because, and this ties into what we were saying about Black Friday, and he's telling Jerry. In his great delivery and cadence, Jerry Stiller was a national treasure, and I wish that man had never died. That guy was amazing. His amazing timing as a sitcom comedian. And Ben Stiller, his son, hits and misses. It's hits and misses.
He's not as good.
It's not nearly as good. And I'm sure he would say that too. I'm sure he would agree. I'm not nearly as good as my father. But Jerry Stiller was always on as Frank Costanza. Always. And he says, he's telling Jerry, I was standing in line for a doll, and George goes, action figure. And he says, as I was raining down blows upon this other man, I had a revelation that there had to be another way. And from there, ding, Festivus was born. And then there's the poll, the airing of grievances, the Festivus isn't over until you pin your father, feats of strength, all of these kinds of things. Now, the writers of Seinfeld created Festivus. One of the writers did because his father came up with Festivus because of sort of not wanting to be bothered with the commercialization of the holidays. Now, the parts of Festivus that I like are the parts where you get to gripe about everybody. and tell them all the problems that you've had with them during the course of the year. Which, by the way, I think we should actually do that. I think that that's actually a brilliant innovation that would, I think, minimize a lot of the introspection stuff, because we just realize, oh, we just have continuing conflicts. It's fine. I got a lot of problems with you people, and you're all going to hear about it.
we have a sports talk radio station here in Boston that does a Festivus episode every year where they just air their grievances about all the Boston sports teams.
It's
hilarious. Hilarious.
That's genius. And of course it's in Boston. Of course. Of course it is. Of course it is. But my gosh, the level of grievances that are going to be around this year. Good Lord, from the Red Sox to the Patriots. It's going to be amazing this year. This is going to be a banner year for you all. But anyway, I think we should have an airing of grievances. I think that would be very helpful and therapeutic. It is one of those phenomenons that sort of crawled out from underneath the gutter of Black Friday when people realize just how ridiculous and wackadoo it is to like yell at somebody whose wife left in line over a Star Wars toy, right? Like, people had to look at that behavior and just go, what are we doing? We're missing all of it. And Charles Dickens, because we talked about the Christmas Carol last year, we'll be re-releasing that episode this year, just in time for the holiday. But Dickens even lamented the beginning of all that consumer culture and its spiritual outcomes. And then, of course, Willa Cather took it the next, logical step in sort of describing the moral avarice and greed that's sort of at the core of that, and that drives such behaviors with this young man and drives his hunger. So I guess the question is, like, well, how would you celebrate Festivus, Tom? I guess that's the question. I personally like the poll and the airing of grievances. I'm a big fan of that.
Let me just say, just for the record here, okay? The Patriots and the Red Sox are not the only things I'd be complaining about. Do people not realize that it was this calendar year that the Bruins had a record season? They were crushing people and then lost in the first round of the playoffs. Come on. I mean,
introspection. See, it's backward looking, and they were going to bring it forward.
No, I think Festivus would be an interesting thing for us to incorporate, like, on a whole, on a countrywide level. I think if you think about it, I mean, essentially that's like the day before New Year's Eve, right? Like,
right.
The day before New Year's Eve would be the perfect date.
Yes.
You're going to have New Year's resolutions coming out the next day. So this day, we're going to just spend the day complaining and just ripping people apart.
Clearing the palate. It's a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Before you go into the new year.
I guess, so what would I go? Sorry, the question was, what would I complain about, or
how would you? How would you? Well, let's break it down a little bit more. So you've got the pole. So you got the aluminum pole, which I think is brilliant. You've got the airing of grievances. You've got the feats of strength, right? And there's one other thing which I'm forgetting right now, but I'll remember it in just a moment. So you've got 4 elements to Festivus, right? And of course, George on the episode decided to give his gift, decided to donate your gift to the Human Fund, which I also think is brilliant. Money for people. And so he would just give you a card that said, a donation has been made of your gift in the name of the Human Fund, which I think is just genius. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
I mean, what the weird part is, for my family, I don't think we need a day like that. I mean, we complain all the time. we're talking. I just had this conversation on Saturday about. Now, I will not go into the nitty-gritty details.
We don't need the nitty-gritty details.
But let me just say that as a we were talking about land acknowledgements to the Native community.
Sure.
And I was ripping them apart. I'm like, this is all the
not asking for the nitty. Yeah.
All the adjectives you want to add in there. This ridiculous, stupid, crazy. What I probably used every one of them that signified that these were a joke, right? Like, so I think the idea behind Festivus happening on one day is kind of silly. I think we spend all year complaining and moaning and groaning about everything else, and then the holidays come, and then we're thankful for the same things we were just complaining about like 2 months ago. So I don't know. I think it's
well, do you think that then let's move to the feats of strength. Do the feats of strength stop criminal behavior? Is that basically what we were all arguing about over Black Friday? We need feats of strength. Otherwise, well-mannered tax-paying people don't have any way to get out the cortisol. Like, it just builds up, right? The adrenal responses. And you've got this nice, person who mows their lawn and waves at the neighbor who just wants to, I mean, you mentioned the purge. Okay. But I mean, without going all the way into that whole murder part.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess that makes a little bit of sense, but that's why I have a gym in my basement.
So you can't be pinned? Your son can't pin you?
Just go down and vent some frustration on the heavy bag or on the speed bag or on the deadlift or whatever it is. Like,
we're gonna deadlift for Festivus.
Yeah, deadlift for Festivus. That's a marketing angle right there. Deadlift for Festivus.
We're solving problems here. No, I love it in the context of, obviously we're joking here, we're joking around, we're kidding around. But I mean, I think that and again, that line in here that I love, there's nothing more maddening than there's nothing more maddening than to have morally consented to crime and then lack the nerve and the force to carry it out. I think you get the nerve and the force to carry it out when your consequences are far enough away from you, right?
Yeah.
And I think what holidays of all kinds do, whether it's Festivus or, July 4th, right? Or, I don't know, Mother's Day, it brings all of that to us, right? You talk about, not having gratitude for the entire year. Now we're going to have gratitude at the end of this cycle. I think that's true because the nature of celebration sharpens things for people in their heads. And human beings, we have so much chaos in our own heads and in our own lives. Like, we need that time set aside to just focus on one thing, even though 10 minutes afterward, we're going to be jumping right back into the chaos.
Well, and there's something to be said. And again, like you said, I know we're joking and we're taking this to an extreme joke.
Yeah.
But if you, again, reel this back into a corporate environment, and there's something to be said about anonymous surveys and being able to really air out your grievances toward your company. Because if leadership really wants the answer and they really want to solve problems, they're going to listen to their people, but they're going to give them the freedom to say what they need to say and without repercussion on it, right? So that's the feat of strength. Essentially, to me, that's the interpretation of feat of strength, right? Like, you're gonna give them the opportunity to air out whatever grievance they have, but you're not going to penalize them for pointing out the detriment or pointing out the fault or the failure of the company. You're going to reward them in a sense, if you think about it, because you're going to fix it. So you're going to go fix the problem. And then hopefully year over year, those grievances become either A, more manageable, or B, non-existent, right? Like, you're going to fix these things. And hopefully you build in a mechanism where it's not just once a year that you're doing this. But in staying with the theme that we're talking about, even if it was once a year, it's still going to be a benefit to the company if you're giving people that sense of and to your point a second ago, okay, I got this anonymous thing, I can write whatever I want, so there's no repercussion here. I can be as evil, as mean, or as open and honest and sincere. Like there's very distinctly differences, and you could literally say the same thing. It's a matter of how it's interpreted on the other side of it, right? Like, so again, from a leadership perspective, you need to be open-minded, open-hearted, and being able and willing to hear the hard truths.
Well, in no society that I've ever heard of has ever survived a mass level of anonymity. So, anonymous feedback at, I'm going to name a giant corporation here. If I work at Ford, which I think employs 55,000 people, something like that. Okay. Anonymous feedback at Ford can survive that. It's fine. The culture of Ford will survive that. Anonymous feedback at a societal level via, we've been experiencing this for the last 30 years. This is not anything new that I'm saying, right? We recognize what it is. We just don't have the solution to the problem. But anonymous feedback on the internet from like rollerbaby65@gmail.com. I don't care. Like, who are you? I don't know. You could be a bot. You could be an AI. You could be an AI bot. You could be somebody sitting in a room somewhere overseas, just spamming me or spamming the platform I happen to be on. Who are you? And so at a global scale, or at a not even a global scale, I'll break it down even further, at a nation state scale, no society ever survives anonymity. It just doesn't. There's no way. There's no way to build a relationship with that.
But there's some fundamental flaws between the two, like fundamental, very foundational differences between the two, right? Like, you're talking about a company that the anonymity comes from a link that you provide that is only going to be attached to the people that you want the information from, right? You're asking them for the information. From a societal perspective, you may or may not want that person's feedback.
I don't. So, I don't want rollergirl65@yahoo.com's feedback. I don't
exactly.
care.
So,
I don't care.
So when you see it, it's not accepted the same way. It's not the same. So I agree. I think you're right, but I think the purposes between the two are completely different.
Yeah. There's a bifurcation, but I think the emotional response, which is what holiday systems get to, is managing that emotional response in a cyclical fashion. That emotional response is what we're not good at navigating, I don't think.
I think the best exercise I ever heard when it came to something like this, I was working for a company and they had this survey that they called Stop, Start, Continue. Mm-hmm. So they basically just said, open response, give us 2 things that you want the company to stop doing right now. Like 2 things that you're bothered by. It could be anything you want. I don't like this marketing campaign. I don't like this. Our 401k sucks. Well, whatever it is, but 2 things that you want the company to stop right now, and 2 things that you want the company to continue doing because you love it, and then 2 things you would like them to start doing. So something that's not even on the radar. And the thing I found, because I was in the leadership team of that company, the thing I found the most fascinating was the start. The stop and the continue ones were like normal stuff. It was like, okay, some things we can control, some we can't, some we can influence, some we can't, whatever. But the ones that said start, like, give me 2 things that you wish the company would do tomorrow, they were all over the place with everywhere from giving back to charities to offering daycare to it was all over the spectrum. And I found that those were the most fascinating parts of it, because to me, that was the most personalized version of this. So when you're saying, I want the company to stop doing this, it could be because you think it offends other people, or you think it attacks a certain minority group, or you think it whatever. There's always I just don't like being involved with a company that does this. It's not. But the start piece was very personal all the time. It was interesting. It was very interesting. And the continue was always pretty themed. I'll just say that, across the board of the hundreds of people that we had working for the company.
There's a general through line.
There's a general consensus. Yeah, there's a general line there.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I wonder if I have to think about more about that, because I wonder if it's the spirit of, or the sense of, not the spirit of, the psychological sense of creativity and freshness that's coming in at the beginning, and then in the middle you're just whatever, and then at the end it's more like, okay, I guess we're back to status quo now. I wonder if that's the psychological transitions for people inside of an organizational behavioral context like what you're talking about, that picks that up. That's interesting. I have to think some more about that.
But the exercise itself was awesome. I loved it. I actually really liked it. They called it Start, Stop, Continue. It was
and I've heard a variation of that before. I don't know where. I've read about it in some organizational behavior literature piece. But yeah, that definitely has some value. Excellent. Now back to the book, back to the story anyway, The Burglar's Christmas. So we're going to skip over the MacGuffin piece. You're going to have to read it to figure out what that is. And we're going to go to William talking to his mother. I'm not going to tell you how he got there, though. You have to read it and find out. I'd rather you wouldn't, Will. Listen, this is his mother talking. Listen, between you and me, there can be no secrets. We are more alike than other people, dear. Dear boy, I know all about it. I am a woman, and circumstances were different with me, but we are of one blood. I have lived all your life before you. You have never had an impulse that I have not known. You have never touched a brink that my feet have not trod. This is your birthday night. 24 years ago, I foresaw all this. I was a young woman then, and I had hot battles of my own, and I felt your likeness to me. You were not like other babies. From the hour you were born, you were restless and discontented as I have been before you. You used to brace your strong little limbs against mine and try to throw me off as you did tonight. Tonight you have come back to me, just as you always did after you ran away to swim in the river that was forbidden you, the river you loved because it was forbidden. You are tired and sleepy, just as you used to be then, only a little older and a little paler and a little more foolish. I never asked you where you had been then, nor will I now. You have come back to me. That's all in all to me. I know your every possibility and limitation, as a composer knows his instrument. He found no answer that was worthy to give to a talk like this. He had not found life easy since he had lived by his wits. He had come to know poverty at close quarters. He had known what it was to be gay with an empty pocket, to wear violets in his buttonhole when he had not breakfasted, and all the hateful shams of the poverty of idleness. He had been a reporter on a big metropolitan daily where men grind out their brains on paper until they have not one idea left and still grind on. He had worked in real estate office where ignorant men were swindled. He had sung in a comic opera chorus and played Harris in an Uncle Tom's Cabin Company and edited a socialist weekly. He had been dogged by debt and hunger and grinding poverty until to sit there by a warm fire without concern as to how it would be paid for seemed unnatural. Not going to read the whole thing, but just for reference, in our script, we do have the story of the prodigal son, taken from or referenced from the Bible, from Luke 15, 11 through 32. Not going to read that whole thing, but what I am going to do is I'm going to point out some parallels that jumped out to me early with this. So when the mother is talking to the son, and don't worry, he has interactions with his father too. It is the idea of the prodigal son returning, right? It's this idea of prodigal return, which is again is framed by Cather, even in that last piece where he talks about all the jobs that he's had and all the things that he's done. It's framed in a cyclical context, not a linear one, right? And it's this idea of as well as Nietzsche would talk about. This is actually one of the truths buried in the Nietzschean two lies and a truth dance that he used to do. This myth of eternal return, right? The idea that you can always return back to the place where you started, or you will always return back to the place where you started. And of course, that's a biblical trope, which we do often see in Cather's works, whether it be from Proverbs, whether it be from Genesis. In this case, this is from Genesis and from Luke, from ashes to ashes and from dust to dust, right? You're going to be returning back to the place where you came from. Well, that entire idea of the myth of return is the MacGuffin for Cather, after all, not the act that William engages in to get himself into and then through the house and to get his mother's attention. What's interesting, the turn that Cather does here at a literary level, which is interesting to me, is that in the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son, it's the father that accepts the son back, right? But here it's the mother that accepts the son back. By the way, in the story of the prodigal son, Jesus, when telling this story to his disciples, does not mention a mother at all. There's no female presence in that biblical story, which is one of the major reasons why in a patriarchal culture like the one that the patriarchal Eastern culture that the Bible came out of, this is why it shocked his audiences when he actually said it. As a matter of fact, they were probably scandalized by the idea that a father would run to his son. That was kind of a no-no. Well, in our American culture, that's now transposed over to the mother, because the mother is the one that holds that maternal care, right? And the father, as is often in Cather's work, the father represents the world, right? And we see this in My Antonia. We saw this in My Antonia with grandfather and grandmother. Grandmother was way more maternal in that book, and grandfather represented the wheel of the world that was constantly turning. That the boy in My Antonia, Jim, I believe, if I remember correctly, was attempting to break himself on in an attempt to get to modernity, right? And Antonia, of course, rejected that and stayed in a different spot. Now, Cather uses this inversion of the biblical narrative to address the growing separation between parents and children in America that was being changed by ambition and industrialization. The son, William, in A Burglar's Christmas, doesn't return to the farm. He goes to the city. He goes to Chicago, not to the Nebraska prairie. And even his parents, in an attempt to either reconnect or to move or whatever, it's very vague there, because I think Cather hadn't worked that part out. They moved to Chicago as well. So there's a dynamic here of moving from the farm to the city and everything shifting around and changing, which gets us, of course, to the role of return and the myth of return. We already talked about forgiveness. So let's talk about this idea of returning. I don't remember which writer it was who said it. I will probably remember it as we're talking, but this idea of you can't go home again. Yeah, maybe if you think that like progress is a linear thing, right? There's no cycles. But Tom, can you go home again? Can leaders go home again? Can you wind up back in the place where you started?
I mean, I can't see why not. Only I was told at a very young age that, to be nice to people on the way up because you're going to see them again on the way down.
That's
So
right.
like the whole idea of like, if you, it's funny that I had another conversation with my other son, which was talking about like there's a time in your life where you're so new at your profession that you just need to, be quiet, learn, work hard, just go move forward. And then there's a tipping point where it starts to balance the balance of knowledge and youthfulness catches up, like to the point where it's like this perfect mix of like, and I was telling them that it happens kind of in your 30s, right? Like in your early to mid 30s, where you've got that 10 years of experience, but you're still young enough to have the ambition to drive XYZ. And then when you hit your 40s, it's like you don't want to do the hard work anymore. You want to strategize. You want to be the top level, like, and then you hit your late 50s, 60s, and you're like, I just want a job. I'll take whatever job you give me. Like, right? Like, so to your point, like, but it's, so yes, I think you can. I don't think everybody does, but I think it's possible that you can go back to the beginning and back to your roots. And, I definitely think it's possible.
So I think of my own journey in my own, business.
Yeah, I don't think of it because I'm not going back to where I started either.
Well, I didn't think I was either. And COVID happened and I wound up right back at the kitchen table. Like it was weird, like literally in the exact same spot. And I sat there when we were all had to shut down and go home. And I had my laptop up literally in the exact same spot at the exact same table. And I thought, wow, 10 years to go like 4 inches.
Yeah. So I didn't
really
have that.
And I didn't really know what to do with that. Like I didn't really know where to put that. So I didn't think about it and I moved on.
Yeah, I didn't have that issue. I mean, we were already, before COVID even started, we were already generally working from home, and like we already had remote stuff going on. Like it wasn't really that bad. But what I was referring to is I started my professional career in the restaurant industry. I'm not doing that again. I'm just letting you know. I am not. I'm not ending up back there.
You don't want to wind up where Anthony Bourdain wound up when he was 45 and dipping fries, dipping hot fries and like grease. And he was like, what am I doing? I'm 45.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, Anthony Bourdain had a very interesting life. So we won't use him as an example. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not getting to the point where I'm going back to that. That's what I was getting at. So, but the rule applies. So essentially what I was thinking, like, as I was thinking about this is, it doesn't matter where you end up in life or what job you have, what role you play. That doesn't matter. The comment is, be nice to them on the way up because you're going to see them again on the way down. It's just people in general. Like when you look at and I remember about 10 years ago, there was this huge conversation that was popping up all over the place on how we have to change the entire workplace dynamic because millennials just were different than we were, right? Like well, guess what, people? Millennials are turning 45. Like they're not. And if you start talking to them today and you ask them today if they could talk to themselves when they were 20, they would, everyone that I know anyway, every one of them that I know would say, I would smack the absolute crap out of myself and tell myself to straighten up and fly right. Like, because this whole philosophy of like, we are the workforce. We are going to dictate to you what we're going to do. We are going to dictate. It just went away. It went away as they got a little older and realized that they were just being obnoxious. Now we got Gen Z coming up thinking the same goddamn way. Excuse my language. But like, 10 years from now, Gen Z is going to realize, guess what? You are no different than the 18 other generations that came before you. Just work hard, just work, get a work ethic and go to work.
So this is interesting that you bring this up, the generational cyclical piece, because the number one module that I had that I was training on before COVID, number one module I had was managing the multi-generational workforce, number one. And people would pay me thousands of dollars to come in and say what Tom just said for free. I actually feel kind of good about that, actually.
You should feel good about that.
I do feel good about that, actually. And he is correct. The reams of digital ink that were spent talking about the millennials, unbelievable. And now we are in a space where, watch Tom Libby, reams of digital ink are being spent on how Gen Z is going to revolutionize the workplace. And the reality is there's nothing that scares a millennial more than a Gen Zer. Just like there was nothing that scared a baby boomer more than a millennial.
Well, Gen X.
Well, we always get forgotten, so I'm just going to skip over us anyway.
All right. Yeah, I guess.
It doesn't matter. We don't scare anybody. There's only 13 to 20 million of us. We don't scare anybody. We're just hanging out. We don't want to be scary. We just want to, why would you, scary? Please, come on. Just relax. Dude, I just think it's funny that every generation complains about the next one, right? Absolutely.
And then they end up falling into that same.
Absolutely. And this is the cycle thing that flummoxes our small p, not large p, not capital P political, our small p progressive like tendencies to believe that everything improves, right? And we get this is why like the things that people argue about on social media at a certain point, and this happened to me a few years ago, I realized I need to get out of the social media arguments because not only are we not advancing anything, but we're going to have the same arguments 10 minutes from now. And there's no, to paraphrase with Seinfeld, there's no hugging and no learning. Okay, the no hugging part, fine. I don't want to hug you if you're on Twitter. Please stay away from me. You don't want to hug me either. But I would rather there be some learning. And there's not learning. There's no growth here. And of course, you then can criticize the digital silos and the way that they don't foster growth and it's all dopaminergic and blah, 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 blah. Okay, yes, all of that is true. But at a certain point, people have to decide. And I was reading a blog post about this the other day where the guy at the end who has made his business over the last 15 years of looking at the basically being what he calls accelerationist now, which is now the term used for progress, but being pro-accelerationist, he's like, maybe at the end of the blog post, he after 15 years, I've been reading this guy for a long time, he went, maybe the internet isn't going to save us. And I thought, the thing that Danny Glover says to Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon 4, right at the beginning of that movie, when they're sitting on the bench and he just looks at him and Mel Gibson can't do it because he got whipped by the kid and he was like faking or whatever and trying to get out of the boxing ring, that first little setup that they have.
Yeah.
And Danny Glover looks at him and goes, finally. It finally happened. And that's just what I want. I want to literally look at these people who have been writing deems of digital ink about the millennials, and now are doing the same thing about Gen Zers, and are now getting thrown over by the Gen Zers. People who are talking about how the internet was going to save us and are now sort of backing away from that. The folks who are arguing in social media silos about things that, quite frankly, we could have solved 10 years ago if we'd realized that we had the same conversation 10 minutes ago. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And I have that feeling. I do. I have that feeling of like Murtaugh. Finally, it finally happened.
Yeah, I hope so, actually. I'm not so convinced though, because they're the Gen Zers are already talking about so. Of course, what age group is the Gen Zers right now? They're early 20s, right? Like the
18 to 34, allegedly.
18. So 34-year-olds really are Gen Z? No way. They do not think like a 21-year-old. That's two different things. Anyway, whatever. The early 20s. I'm
just giving you the numbers. I'm not justifying them.
The early 20s people, like 21 to 26-year-olds, are already complaining about high school kids. They're already complaining about the fact that they don't understand. They don't understand the fight. They don't understand. I'm like, oh my God, you people. Like, of course they don't. They're in high school. What are you expecting them to be thinking? Like, I don't understand what you're expecting of them. They have no life experience whatsoever.
None.
You want them to have an opinion? Stop.
Well, then you said, by the time you hit 30, you've been 10 years in your career. I would say the numbers have been pushed back to 40 now. I don't think it's 30. I think it's
40. Thinking mid-30s, so I was thinking like 35.
Okay. Okay, sure. 35. Okay. So where a lot of this started with the youth culture pieces, it was in the 1960s with the idea that you would never trust anybody over 30, granted to us by the baby boomers. This philosophy of the people over 30, which, by the way, I heard this the other day, and I will repeat this because it is true. The person who was the vice president of the Rand Corporation was 32 in 1970 something. Okay. Now, this person who was bringing this up on this other podcast was bringing this up as a critique of the capitalist system, right? That somehow we have failed capitalism, or somehow capitalism has failed young people by not allowing people in their 30s to be vice presidents of major corporations. Except the thing is, people in their 30s now who are Pache, Gen Z or millennials, whichever, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Those people are running startups. Those people are senior leaders in banks now. They are moving into those positions where the VP of Rand was in 1970. The difference between them and the VP of Rand in 1970 is the VP of Rand in 1970 had 3, maybe 4 kids that he had to pay for that kept his head on straight. That's the fundamental difference, right, between past generations and this current one. And this is not me making this up. You can go look at the fertility numbers. You could go look at the demographic numbers, right? You could go look at the replacement numbers. I'm not making any of this up. This is not a crazy theory. This is not some nonsense that Jesan made up on his podcast. This is reality. You can go look at the numbers and see what the birth rates are and what the family creation rates are. And the Kaiser Permanente organization has measured this. The UN has measured this in the United States. For people typically in the childbearing ages, between 26 and I think it's like 34, I think it's down to like 60, 70% of those people ain't making babies. They ain't making babies and making families. Well, there is something about that process that matures you in a way that we dismiss, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Can you be matured by that at any point in time when you have a child, no matter where you are at, up until the age of 40, 50, whatever? Yes, absolutely. This is why, like, Larry King was popping out kids when he was 60. He was constantly trying to mature himself. And none of you who are listening know who Larry King is. It's fine.
I know who Larry King is.
You know who Larry King is. Well, the younger folks don't know who Larry King is. Yeah. Google him. He was interesting. Google him. He was an interesting guy. I think there's something to that theory. So the 30-year-olds are being put in charge. We are trusting them, but the people who are being put in charge are the and this is now becoming a thing. I don't know if you see this on social media recently towards the end of the year, the double income, no kids crowd, right? Who are right. Yeah. Who are, running their mouths. Let's just say that.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, I was talking to one of my kids the other day, and we were talking about different, like, they're all of my kids, just for the audience's reference. My youngest kid is almost 22. Like, so she'll be 22 in a month or two. So all of them, and she's the youngest. So I have kids ranging from 21 to 28, 29. So, and none of them have kids. But when I was younger, I had my first kid when I was 20, 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were talking over this past weekend, a few of my kids were home, and we had a family event. So we are just shooting the breeze, having a couple of drinks and just chatting, whatever. Right. But we were talking about how, or they were asking me why myself, like I was so much more advanced. To your point, I was further along in my career at 25 than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a regional vice president of sales at like 28, right? Like, so, and my kids are like, I'm not even close to there. What is it? And I said to them, and I never thought of it this way, but I was like, well, because I had you guys to worry about. I had to drive so hard to sustain our family that there was nowhere to put me except for let me move up the ladder. Like, I was so driven to be successful and move up the ladder and make more money, and because I had you guys to worry about. You guys don't have any kids to worry about, so you don't care how much money you make. It's like,
right.
Like, I can go, if I can afford that $1,000 a month apartment, then so be it. Where for me, the $1,000 a month apartment was the baseline, like baseline, like that was the foundation of like our existence, and then everything above that, I had to go fight for to get more like food and a car and whatever. Like I was like, and to your point, I wasn't even thinking of it from a maturity level, but it absolutely true. I look at myself at 22, 23 years old, and my kids now at 23, 24 years old, I'm like, that's a joke. Sorry, I don't mean, but it's like, but it is true. Like, they think of, they're still shooting cans off the back porch, for crying out loud. I'm like, I stopped doing that when I was 18, 17 because I had to worry about a kid, like it's, and I have 5 kids. None of my 5 kids have any kids. They're not even starting yet.
So this is the thing, I think, that is the fundamental separation. I think what you're getting to here is absolutely critical. I also think that this is the tension that you see in the culture, right, between people who did that and the people who didn't. And now the people who didn't are the vast majority of people. So the vast majority of people are now on that other side of, and this is why you have the double income, no kids people running around cocking and crowing and beating their chests. Except, what are you going to do when you're old?
Yeah, my youngest son just said that to me. He's like, Dad, I hope my nieces and nephew like me, because I'm not planning on having kids. Somebody has to take care of me when I'm old. It's like, good luck, buddy, because I won't be here. I'll be gone.
Oof. That's all I have to say to that. Oof.
Yeah.
And so that dynamic, at a cultural level, I don't know how we address that. I don't know how you even begin to get arms around that. However,
well, the scary piece is this generation thinks that, like, especially younger people think that, well, that's the government's responsibility to take care of people at that when they get to a certain, and that I was like, nah, don't bank on that. That is not the case. But they do feel that way.
Even if you let me just say a caution, and you can clip this and send this to your multiple 20-year-old kids. Even if you vote for a politician that can give you all of that, even if you vote for a politician that makes policies that you think will give you all that, Politicians and policies cannot overcome the laws of nature.
Correct.
Period. That's it. Those are my 3 sentences. That's my 3-sentence. Just, that's the wisdom. And I know it won't be listened to. It's okay. Just be sure that who you're voting for.
Or it will be listened to, but it'll be too late.
But it'll be too late. It'll be too late. So yeah, you got to get out. You got to hustle. I mean, I always, and I'll close up by saying this around the corner here, because we need to close our podcast today. But, you know, one of the things that I get run the most for on social media when I say it, or when I tweet it, or when I write it, or when I post it, is say what you want about the baby boomers. They at least got after it. You know, yeah, they might have destroyed XYZ institutions and ABC environment and rampant capitalism and consumerism, you know, all of the critiques from the Marxist left. And then, of course, the critiques from the libertarian right are they destroyed freedom. They voted for all these politicians that surveilled us. They built these big tech surveillance states, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. But you know what they did? They got after it. Period. They got after it. They actually decided that instead of, to Tom's point, instead of sitting around and hoping that someone in the future would do something, they said, no, I'm going to do something right now. And by the way, something beyond posting online, which, yes, I know they didn't have that, but even if they had, they probably would have ignored it. Something beyond merely making a protest, right? Like all those protest videos that you see of those people that are running around in the 60s and 70s, you know what those people became? University professors. And then eventually they wound up running the universities. They went and did something. A lot of those people went and became vice presidents of corporations. They went and did something. They busted their behind to do something. And that is one of the other critical differences. So between past generations, I would say, the generation that is now retiring and moving into its twilight, and the current generation of folks that we have now in our culture. We're speaking of which, back to the book, back to the story. It's only a couple of paragraphs here at the end of The Burglar's Christmas by Willa Cather. He drew a long sigh. This is William. He drew a long sigh of rich content. The old life, with all of its bitterness and useless antagonism and flimsy sophistries, its brief delights that were always tinged with fear and distrust and unfaith, that whole miserable, futile, swindled world of Bohemia seemed immeasurably distant and far away, like a dream that is over and done. And as the chimes rang joyfully outside and sleep pressed heavily upon his eyelids, he wondered dimly if the author of this sad little riddle of ours were not able to solve it after all, and if the potter would not finally mete out his all-comprehensive justice, such as none but he could have, to his things of clay, which are made in his own patterns, weak or strong, for his own ends. And if someday we will not awaken and find that all evil is a dream, a mental distortion that will pass when the dawn shall break. We've just been talking about this in a different kind of context, but he did live a bohemian life. And that's, by the way, what Cather, that's the term that was used for somebody who was not having children when they should have been having them and was running around doing multiple jobs and footloose and fancy free and wound up poor. They used to call that bohemian. It wasn't, I don't want you to think of, as I often do, I don't want you to think of a person with a man bun drinking a Starbucks. It's not what I want you to think of when you think of bohemian. I want you to think of what Willa Cather is considering. And Tom laughed at that, but this is the image that I have in my head. So forgive me for all the people with man buns that I have offended. No, don't forgive me. You got a man bun, you're ridiculous. Stop. Okay. Well, there goes half our audience. All right. Well, all right. So my wife would just say I'm just mad because I'm bald. She would just say that.
I feel your pain.
So
I get a little more hair than you. Not much.
Not much. Not much. It's
not much at all.
I don't know what you're holding on to there, Tom. But anyway.
I just bought a new brush. Just get
okay.
One more brush out of it.
One more brush. Okay. All right. Okay. Just bald is beautiful, sir. Anyway. And you can carry it. You've got the head to carry it. You're fine.
I'll believe you. I'll take your word for it for now.
Hold on. Those last vestiges of hope. It's the
Well,
last
like
vestiges of hope.
my significant other said, my wife will, I'll be in there and she'll be like, "Are you brushing your four hairs again?" I think there's a few more than four. Come on.
You got a few more than four. You're fine. You're probably fine. Well, what do I care? You're not bunning it up, like I said, with a Starbucks cup and a pair of like, Tom slippers. Like you're not doing that
No.
in like an urban area. And my point is this: like the moralistic Midwestern anti-bohemian idea comes through here in Cather's work, and we already have talked about this a little bit, but I want to make a broader critique or a broader point, not a critique, a broader point. There is a price to living in society with its social structure, but there is also a price to wandering around and living a libertine and bohemian style. And the idea that you could live a particular lifestyle without consequence didn't begin in the 1960s, interestingly enough. It actually began, it began in the 1890s, and it went through cycles before it hit its penultimate cycle, probably right around now. We're probably at the peak of that idea of being able to live without consequence. And so William is portrayed as having paid the price for living a bohemian lifestyle, but he was able, through forgiveness and through the miracle of return, to avoid the punishment. He was able to kind of slip past that, right? Yeah, he was going to engage in robbery for his food, but he was able to slip past that and move into a mother's love. By the way, his friend was no help to him as he left him right at the beginning of the story. Cather's point is that family and home are all you can count on in a hard world. And this may ring really weird to our tone deaf this may ring as tone deaf to our postmodern ears. But it is definitely something that is true. And it's definitely something that is evident, right, in the ways in which we engage with each other. And it's evident for us as leaders. So as we round the corner here, as we round the corner here, I want to go ahead and ask Tom this. How can leaders stay on the path with all of this mishmash that we've talked about with the Burglar's Christmas this holiday season? I always give you the hard question at the end. It's the last hard question of the year. You're done.
Yeah,
you don't. There's no more hard questions after this.
That's true.
Well, the next hard questions are coming on the other side of the new year.
I think there's some. I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more question than that. I think it's a much bigger question than that, because I think as a leader, I mean, you set the tone and culture of the company, right? So if the tone and culture of your company is, we care about you as an individual person, as a family person, we care about what happens to you outside of these four walls.
Yeah.
And I think it's mission critical that you continue that feeling and philosophy throughout the course of your your engagement with that employee, right? But if your tone and culture of your company is, you come here to work, we pay you, and then you go home and you're on your own. That and both of those two worlds exist, by the way. Like, a lot of people think that every company nowadays is warm and fuzzy, and that's not entirely true. There are plenty of companies out there that just think of you as a number, and that you have a role to play, and that you go to work and you go home, and then when you're home, you're on your own time and you do your own thing. And you might have a little bit, in those cases, you might have a little bit of like a lower management person that gives a rat's patoot about you on a personal level, and they build their own culture within their team, but that's not necessarily a corporate culture. So it's still it still goes back to the leader of that smallish group of people. This is the culture that we're going to have. We're going to care about each other. We're going to do things. But as a corporate culture, it doesn't always fly. I think there's some, and this gets even more difficult too with the work from home and like all this
Mm-hmm.
remote working thing. We don't have the talks at the water cooler anymore that
Yep.
people always talk about, and like, or you see in some of the past movies, and like it's there's a lot of disconnect. I'll give you a good. My wife works for a very, very large medical company here in the Northeast, and she's a remote worker. And they were just talking about a Christmas party, and she went, "I ain't driving all the way there for what? To see people that I don't even see on a regular basis. Like, we're all remote. I don't know these people. I don't
Right.
know them. I have no interest in going and hanging out with people I don't know. And they all work for the same company, right? Like, so, and that's the culture that they set. They've given
Mm-hmm.
that culture power. Like, they've given that. So to have lack of participation in a holiday party is their own damn fault. Like,
Right. Yeah, no, you're right.
right.
Nope.
So
Yeah.
like, I think it starts with, forget about how you interact or what you do is on a day-to-day. Like, it's not about your actions in interactions on a one-on-one level. I think for leaders, it's more about the tone and culture that we set for the company, and making sure that we are consistent with that tone and culture. Making sure that if we have an open door policy, make sure you keep an open door policy. Don't shy away from hard conversations, and don't, like, you gotta, make sure that you practice what you preach, and talk, walk the walk, talk the talk, all that stuff, all those stupid cliches that we never understood how it works. This is how it works. Like,
This is how it works.
this is
Yeah.
the point of it. Like, this is the point of all of those cliches, that you gotta, you have to make sure that, that you're, and that there's, like, you're setting people up for success. And I'm not talking about their own successes. Like, if I want to be a millionaire, I'm going to go work for company A, and they're going to make me a millionaire. That's not what I mean. We were talking earlier today. I was talking about, with a couple of Jesan and I's mutual friends or colleagues. I'm not sure what you call the growth craft advisors, but let's call them friends for this purpose. And we were talking about definitions of success and what it looks like. And it is a very personalized thing. Your
Mm-hmm.
definition of success and my definition of success may be completely different. One person may think, you know, having ending their life with millions and millions and millions of dollars is the definition of success. Another person may think the definition of success is, when I die, there's tons and tons of people at my funeral praising how much of a good person I was. It had nothing to do with my wealth, and had more to do with my person, and who I am, and how my close knit society, or people view me,
Mm-hmm.
is my definition of success. So if you really want to be a truly good leader, I think that's the biggest part of it, is really identifying people as individuals, and then being able to have a collective tone and culture of your company.
I think that requires introspection. And yes, introspection, as we've mentioned repeatedly today, is an arrow that points backward. But I also think it requires goal setting, which is the arrow that points
Yes.
forward. I mean, we talked about goal setting, and we kind of, I won't say we mocked it, but we definitely sort of talked about how people fail, at goal setting. I think the reason people fail at goal setting is because they haven't merged that introspection and that goal setting successfully together. There's still too much friction between those two areas. Plus, there's a lack of realization of what your priorities should be, right? And so, I would encourage folks, when you get into introspection in a leadership position, or when you're introspective as a leader, to figure out what you want to be introspective about. Do you want to be introspective about culture? Do you want to be introspective about success? Do you want to be introspective about the goals that you want to see your team accomplish? What do you want to be introspective about? There's also this idea of return, right? Forgiveness, reconciliation. We talked a little bit about this. Forgiveness has to be more than just a set of PR words from your lawyer or your legal firm. They actually have to mean something. And by the way, if you're not actually sorry, don't say you are.
Yeah, right.
Really don't don't say you are. We actually will appreciate it more if you don't say you are. Now, I'm not talking about sort of the big brands who have 400 lawyers and 300 PR people and all that. That's a different kind of thing. I'm talking about the small and medium-sized organizations who are definitely embedded in the community, where the transparency of what it is you're doing can be seen by everybody, and the immediacy of that can be felt. Really think critically about what apologizing actually means if you have done something wrong. And if you haven't, or you don't believe you have, what are your introspective explanations for why you chose the path that you chose. I actually saw this recently in my own life from a local leader who said something from a stage, got a bunch of people's ruffles feathered, and yes, I did say ruffles feathered, on Facebook, and then came back the next week and didn't apologize, explained, moved on. I thought that was an interesting move. Very interesting. And he didn't need 50 lawyers and 40 PR agencies to figure out how to do that. He just needed to be connected to his community and connected to the people that he was making the message towards. I also think that we can get from the Burglar's Christmas kind of what we talked about a little bit at the end. There's trade-offs and costs when we do things. The great economist Thomas Sowell, who hopefully will be around with us for another year. But the great economist Thomas Sowell once said that life is full of trade-offs, some of which are brutal, because we live in a world of limited resources, limited time, limited money, limited attention, limited emotional engagement, limited care, limited everything. Everything is limited. Even our lives are limited. And so we have to make trade-offs. Well, trade-offs come with consequences. Trade-offs come with results. And we have to be clear about what the results are. I think leaders have to be clear about what the results of the trade-offs are and the results of the decisions that they're making. And be clear to their team members, be clear to their followers, be clear to everybody. Look, if we make this decision, this is what the consequence is going to be potentially. Or in this trade-off, there were no great decisions. There was just the best of all the bad ones. And that's usually, by the way, 99% of the time, it's the best of all the bad decisions. There is no, I think of the line from Armageddon, there is no good plan, Mr. President. This is the best of all the bad ones. and that's the reality of leadership. That's the reality of trade-offs. And we need to wrap our arms, I think, around that reality. Finally, humor. Like, you gotta laugh. You gotta not take yourself so seriously. We've laughed a little bit on this podcast, and quite frankly, this year I've had a great time hanging out with Tom and getting to know him better. And hopefully you all listening have gotten to know him better as well. Tom will be back next season, for the third season. I can't believe I'm saying that. For the third season of the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. So we'll be back with more great books that maybe Tom has read, maybe Tom has not read. At least he will have read the synopsis of them. And he will give us his fresh insights and fresh takes, because this is good, because he comes to the game almost like virgin snow, right? And kind of walking forth and putting his footprints there, putting his footprints out there for the benefit of us and for the benefit of myself. And so I appreciate Tom's insights and the ways in which he frames things, and it gets me to go, I would not have thought about it that way. So I want to express my gratitude. Look what I did there. See what I did there? To Tom Libby for joining me on the podcast this year. Thank you, Tom.
So it's been my pleasure, and vice versa. By the way, I find it fascinating, to listen to your insights and how you explain certain things. And I find it even more. I find it interesting sometimes how, like, we'll agree, but the way that we get there is different, which I find also very fascinating. Like, so, we don't have an awful lot of argumentative kind of discontent on when we're on together. So I do like that too, although I'm sure there's value to that. I'm just saying that, for me, I think that, being approaching things from a bit more of a lightheartedness and being able to, a bit more accepting of opinions and being able to understand, and like that stuff is it's important. It's important to me. And so I again, and that's kind of my leadership style too, if you haven't figured out. Like, I just, when I run teams and such, I care about people. I genuinely care about people that work for me. I genuinely care about their families. I genuinely want them to succeed. Whatever their definition of success is, it turns into my definition of success for them. So I don't try to instill my ideas or ideals or anything onto anybody else. And I think that has been successful for me. I've run some very good teams. I've had some awesome people work for me, and I've got, and again, and being on this podcast and seeing how some of that experience can kind of come through, and if I can help one person, I'm a happy guy. Like if there's one person listening to this podcast and they hear something that I say that gives them some sort of epiphany, or some sort of like light bulb goes off and they realize that they could, that it just helped them in some way. I think that's fantastic. It makes me a very happy person. So I'll continue to do it as long as you invite me back.
Awesome. Well, we're inviting you back next year. So let's, as we usually do, let's go one book at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. Let's see where we wind up at. And so from all of us here at the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, thank you very much for your ears. And you have a safe and happy holiday season. And, well, we're out. Thank you for listening and subscribing to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. If you're listening to this on any of the major podcast players, like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review and write a little bit in there. A couple of sentences is good enough. That actually helps us game those algorithms that I was just maybe addressing. And, of course, it helps us grow the show. Tell all your family, tell all your friends, and tell the leaders in your life that you know that need to be listening to this show, that this show exists. By the way, if you want to get started on the leadership path yourself, or you know some people who need to go on the leadership path, HSCT Publishing, the home company of Leadership Toolbox and Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, can help you and your team do that. So check out our training webinars, coaching services, and more at leadershiptoolbox.us. We are remote, we're live, we're in person, we're on video, and we've got leadership development solutions for your civic group, nonprofit staff, public sector staff, or even your private sector leaders. And of course, you're going to want to check out our video-based subscription service at leadingkeys.com. That's leadingkeys.com for leadership development on demand. You don't like videos, you don't like training, but you really like the podcast? Well, I would also recommend reading a book. Matter of fact, I'd recommend reading my most recent book, 12 Rules for Leaders, The Foundation of Intentional Leadership. You can get that in paperback, hardcover, or as an ebook on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Ingram Spark, and any other place that you order books online. Finally, of course, we're on YouTube just like everybody else is. We'd love to have you help us grow the YouTube channel, so like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the HSCT Publishing channel on YouTube. Just search for HSCT Publishing, or you can search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button. Subscribing helps us grow the show, as it does with the audio, just is the same with the video. All right, that's it for me.